You know that feeling? That sort of constant hum of a busy life? Deadlines, maybe data, just demanding goals. But underneath all that, sometimes there's this quiet whisper, right? An ache for something, well, something more. For meaning. Connection. Today, we're really diving into that space. Our deep dive is called The Fragile Flame of Hope, and we're looking closely at a particular point on what's called a modified Ingalls scale. Now, for those who might not know it, this scale basically maps out different stages in a spiritual journey. And our mission today is to unpack what it means to be at stage 8. It's a really pivotal moment. We want to understand why it's so vital, not just for seekers, but for professionals too, and how God actually moves when someone's in that space. We've got some fantastic source material to guide us.
Yeah, and what's really striking in the material is that stage is 8.
Mm-hmm.
It isn't just another number on a chart. It's described as this kind of seismic shift. It's the point where faith stops being, just an intellectual thing you discuss.
Right.
Maybe debate.
Right, like a topic in a class.
Yeah, exactly. And it becomes this really personal, urgent, and honestly, maybe a little terrifying question.
Mm-hmm.
Can I really know God?
Mm-hmm.
And you think about today's world, with all the algorithms and metrics, this kind of question, this search for real meaning, feels even more significant, almost like an antidote.
Okay, so let's dig into that a bit more. Stage 8 on this Ingalls scale.
Mm-hmm.
What does it really signify beyond just a number? The sources call it the quiet ache before revelation. What does that mean?
Well, fundamentally, it's about this huge shift.
Yeah.
God stops being simply a topic to analyze. Instead, he becomes this question you carry inside you, deep down, like in your chest. And the sources are clear. It's not conversion, not yet. But crucially, it is invitation, and it is holy. This is where the possibility of God becomes deeply personal.
Wow. So it's like standing on a threshold. You can feel the potential. The heart's maybe pounding a bit, wondering if this God you've only read about or heard about might actually want to meet you.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds incredibly vulnerable and scary too, right? That fear of, what if he doesn't care? Or worse, what if he is real and I'm just not ready?
Absolutely. That vulnerability is key, and the sources address that fear directly. They talk about how the cost of staying on the sidelines is a life half-lived, kind of starved of the very intimacy we're actually yearning for.
Yeah.
So understanding this stage, it's really essential, especially for you if you're involved in spiritual leadership, counseling, ministry, any kind of guidance role, because this is where the potential for real transformation is huge.
Okay, but here's where it gets really interesting for me, based on our reading. If stage 8 is fundamentally about asking, can I know God? What do the sources say about God's part in this? Is God just waiting passively, or is something else going on?
Well, this is maybe the most profound insight from the text we looked at, that quiet ache, that sense of seeking. It's not just you searching for God. The sources frame it as discovering that God has already been seeking you. It totally flips the script. Yeah. Think about John 6:44. No one can come to me unless the Father who sent me draws them. It points to a divine initiative. God's already making the first move.
And when you look across the biblical story, you see this pattern again and again, don't you? A God who reveals, who pursues rather than hides. Like right back in Genesis, God is described as walking in the garden with Adam and Eve. It's relational from the start.
That's such a powerful image. And even after they hid in shame, remember, God's first question wasn't condemnation. It was relational. Where are you? It really is a pursuit.
Exactly. And then you see it with the patriarchs. God actively calling by name. He calls Abraham, makes that promise, I will be your God. And then Moses at the burning bush. Moses. God reveals himself there as I am, WHO, I am, specifically because he sees the suffering and he's coming down to rescue. It's personal. It's active.
And that active pursuit carries right through the prophets, too. You hear what the sources call the cry of divine pursuit. God's heart sounds almost broken. Like in Hosea, how can I give you up, Ephraim? My heart is changed within me. All my compassion is aroused.
That's incredibly moving.
It is. Or Malachi, return to me and I will return to you. These aren't the words of some distant, aloof God. It's a God who deeply desires connection, who is actively reaching out.
So then Paul, speaking to the Athenians in Acts, he brings it right down to earth, doesn't he? He says God is not far from each one of us.
Exactly. And that's key. Not just generally out there, but personally near. It shifts the whole search, you see, from something purely academic, seeking actual communion, because he's already close. They're not trying to bridge some vast cosmic distance.
And then we find that incredible promise in Jeremiah 29:13, you will seek me and find me when you seek me with all your heart. It's presented almost like a divine guarantee, isn't it? Not some cosmic game of hide and seek. If the search is genuine, the finding is assured.
That's the core message there, yeah.
Okay, but this leads to a really important, sometimes difficult question. Our sources talk about the scandal of particularity. For someone just starting to wonder, maybe feeling that stage naggedy ache, why would an infinite God reveal himself so specifically in Jesus? Doesn't that feel, well, limiting?
Yeah, and that's a real sticking point for many people today, isn't it? There's often a preference for a more universal spirituality, or this idea of many paths leading to the same place. So when Jesus says something as definitive as, whoever has seen me has seen the Father, like in John 14:9, that can be jarring. It feels exclusive.
It really can. So how do the sources help us understand this?
Well, the core argument they make is actually quite beautiful, I think. It's that love is always particular.
Say more about that.
Think about it in human terms. A parent doesn't just love the abstract idea of children, they love their child, specifically. A spouse commits to this person, not just the concept of marriage.
Right. Love needs an object. It needs to land somewhere specific.
Exactly. It doesn't float, it lands. And that's what the sources point to with the incarnation. John 1:14, the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. That word dwelt, Silasson in Greek, it literally means he pitched his tent among us.
Like moving into the neighborhood.
Precisely. God didn't stay distant from our suffering, he entered into it. In Jesus, God becomes touchable, interruptible, approachable. He's the ultimate answer to that vulnerable stage make 8 question, can God be known? The answer is a resounding yes, because he made himself knowable in the most particular way possible.
Okay, so if God is actively drawing near and he's revealed himself particularly in Jesus, what does that actually feel like for someone at stage make 8? What are the ways they might experience this divine initiative?
The sources highlight several common, yet often subtle ways this happens. First, there's what they call inner prompting. Think of it as that restless echo of the spirit, maybe a kind of divine discontent. It's usually more of a nudge than a demand.
Like that feeling there's something more.
Exactly, that persistent sense that you're missing something vital. The sources connect this to figures like Hagar in the desert, or Moses feeling drawn to the burning bush, or even Peter's inner stirring that made him drop his nets. It's a quiet internal pull.
Okay, what else?
Then there are things like dreams, visions, and sometimes just unshakable impressions. These often seem to bypass our logical mind and speak directly to the heart. They're described as providing these momentary glimpses of truth that might be unexplainable logically but feel undeniably real. Think of Joseph's dreams, or Nebuchadnezzar's visions, or Peter's vision about clean and unclean animals, or Paul's experience on the Damascus Road. They're very personal, often quite dramatic encounters.
Right, things that you just can't shake off easily.
Precisely. And another way is through what the sources call divine appointments. These are those encounters with people that feel like more than just coincidence. They're often quiet, meaningful interactions, but they seem too purposeful to be chance, like Ruth finding Naomi, or Philip bumping into the Ethiopian eunuch on that road, or Jesus spotting Zacchaeus up in that tree. The sources say these moments put flesh on faith. God uses relationships, connections between people, to reveal himself.
That makes sense. And the last one?
The last one is the witness of believers. And this really emphasizes the power of a life, not just a lecture. Seeing someone live with genuine authenticity, maybe finding joy even in hardship, showing love without an agenda that can be incredibly compelling for someone who's searching. It connects to that verse, 2 Corinthians 4:7. We have this treasure in jars of clay. Our imperfections don't hide God. Sometimes they actually let his light shine through more clearly.
Those are really powerful pathways. Thinking about someone at stage initiate today, maybe feeling overwhelmed or skeptical, do the sources suggest any one of these is more common now? And maybe just for you, reflecting on this, what stands out most? Does any of this resonate with your own experiences?
That's a great question. I don't know if the sources single one out as most common today because it's so personal. But maybe the divine appointments and the witness of believers feel particularly relevant in our connected yet often isolating world. Seeing faith lived out authentically can cut through a lot of noise. For me, personally, it's probably that sense of inner prompting combined with the witness. That quiet nudge, often confirmed or clarified by seeing how faith genuinely impacts someone else's life. That combination feels very real.
Okay, so this brings us to the practical side. For those of us who might be walking alongside someone at stage make an 8, a friend, a colleague, maybe even a family member, or perhaps if we recognize ourselves in this description, what are the most important things we can actually do? How do we engage with that fragile flame of hope without, blowing it out.
Right, that's crucial. The material suggests a framework, our task: pray, presence, and preparation. First, pray, but with discernment. This isn't just rattling off requests. It's thoughtful intercession that aims to prepare the way. Praying specifically for things like healing from religious wounds, because those are often real barriers, praying for an awakening of their longing and the courage to actually follow that longing, and praying that they'd be prepared to receive whatever specific revelation God might have for them, remembering verses like Jeremiah 29.13 and John 14.9 can guide those prayers.
So prayer as preparing the soil, almost.
Exactly. Then second, presence. And this means accompanying them without an agenda. The key here is listening more than you speak. Share your own encounters, perhaps, but avoid arguments. Be vulnerable yourself, rather than trying to seem impressive or having all the answers. The sources emphasize authenticity over authority. Just being with someone truly present builds enormous trust.
That's so important. Less fixing, more being alongside.
Absolutely. And the third part is preparation. This is about gently creating pathways for them to encounter God for themselves. This could be simple things: recommending a book or a song that resonated with you, sharing relevant content. It also involves carefully bridging that scandal of particularity we talked about. Maybe introducing Jesus not as a theological concept, but as a person someone can relate to, someone they can potentially meet. And crucially, walking with. Don't just drop them off. Stay present on their journey.
And tied into that, the sources mention something called discipleship before belief. Can you unpack that a little? It sounds quite counterintuitive.
It does, but it's powerful. It's about creating these relational on-ramps. Instead of demanding belief up front, you focus on building trust, listening without constantly correcting, maybe even suggesting simple spiritual practices they could try before they've fully committed intellectually.
Like prayer or reading a certain passage.
Exactly. It creates a space for them to experience God's presence, to feel that divine draw for themselves, even while they're still in that uncertain, wondering stage. It respects the fragility of that emerging hope.
So wrapping this all up then, what's the core takeaway for you, our listener? We've covered a lot of ground. I think the main message is really encouraging, that fragile flame of hope you might feel or see in someone else at stage Necky 8. It's not weak faith. The sources frame it as emerging faith. It's a sacred start.
Absolutely. And connecting back to everything we've discussed about God's initiative,
Yeah.
his consistent posture is clear. The material strongly suggests God is not hiding. He is waiting. And critically, not waiting to test you, but waiting to welcome you. The whole story, from Genesis onwards, shows a God who has always been moving toward us. He's the seeker. He's the initiator.
Which makes that promise in Jeremiah 29.13 even more comforting, doesn't it? You will seek me and find me. The comfort there is realizing you're not actually chasing after some reluctant God who's playing hard to get. You're simply responding to a God who has already called your name, who is already drawing you near. And if that search inside you is real, is genuine, his presence isn't far behind. So maybe the final thought is this. If the God of Acts 17.27, the one who Paul says is not far from each one of us, if he is real and he is near, then maybe your next step isn't trying to figure him all out intellectually. Maybe it's simpler. Maybe it's just speaking to him, testing the air with a quiet prayer, an honest question, because you might just find he's been standing right beside you all along. So a couple of things maybe to just chew on after this deep dive. What does your own longing to know God perhaps tell you about his nature? And maybe think about who in your own life might be hovering around stage N. How could you offer them simple presence rather than pressure this week? Lots to think about.